We have our segments all cut, and now we're ready to sew them together. But before we start that, I do want to show you that when you do the 2.5-inch wide strip sets, you will get 12 segment sets, which means if in the process of making one of these diamonds, you totally mess up, you get done with that diamond and you wake up in the middle of the night and go, I can't sleep, it's just awful, I can't, that's all right. You have 4 extra sets that you can use, so don't panic. All right, so we're going to construct our diamond segment to look like this. I want to show you a couple of design options though. This would be the traditional setting with one color diamond going across the fat part of the diamond. But this is another option. With this, that main center color goes all the way across the long section. I point that out because the quilt that I plan to design with this, I'm going to end up using both of them. So I want you to kind of keep that in mind. So the way that I put my diamonds together so that I get the most accurate piecing where those diamonds come together is a method I came up with. I've seriously tried everybody's ideas. I've read every book on how everybody else thinks that you should do the matching of your diamonds, and I can't make it work. I've tried. So I came up with my own method, and my method works for me. So try my method, then try everybody else's methods too. And I just really hope and pray that you find a method to get those diamond segments to actually match up perfectly. So we're going to lay down our design, matching up the fat parts of the diamond. So this is the fat of the diamond, this is the skinny of the diamond. And that's what it's going to look like. At this point, I reach into my bag of goodies and I pull out every marking pencil I have, every color. What's important is that it be a very sharp point. You cannot use a pencil that you have to actually sharpen with a pencil sharpener. It won't stay sharp enough, long enough. So you need to use some sort of a mechanical pencil or the mechanical pencil with the white lead, maybe a friction pen, maybe even a permanent marking pen. Whatever it takes to be able to see the marks that you're making. I've got it laid down. I'm going to work on these 2 rows first. I'm going to take it and flip it up. Now keep in mind, I'm doing this opposite, so when you're looking at it, you're thinking about it opposite. So it is facing me that this is making a little stair step. I am going to mark my scant 1/4 inch on those seams. So if I lay my ruler right here, I am a scant 1/4 inch from that seam. I'm going to take a pencil that I think I'll be able to see. Oops, I got to get a lead. Let's try this one. And I'm going to mark it right over that seam. So there is an intersection from the seam to where there is a scant 1/4 inch. I'm going to continue to mark all of them. You can't just mark 1 or 2 of them. You have to mark all of them if you expect it to actually match up. Use a white one on that. Now I'll come to the top. I'll switch to my dark pen, mark an intersection. The next one, again, remembering that it's a scant 1/4 inch, not a true fat 1/4 inch. And the last one. There you go. So when you're looking at it, this is what you're seeing. You're seeing that you've made your marks because now it's time to pin it. This is one of those times that I'm going to pin a lot. On just this segment, I'm going to have 3 pins. And when it comes time to sew, I'm going to sew over those pins. I am not going to pull them out. If I pull them out, my seams will not turn out as perfect as I want them. So the first pin is going to go straight down into that intersection of seam and marking line. Now I'm going to flip this up. Now on the good side of this next segment, there's my intersection. I'm going to poke that pin right into the intersection of the seam and marking line. Now very carefully, straighten that out and make that pin stand straight up and down. Now I reach for a second pin and I put the second pin in to hold everything in place. Now I can move this pin out and go to the next one. Putting the pin straight down between the intersection of the seam and the mark. Hold it straight up and down. Take another pin and push it right next to the pin. So this pin is underneath this seam. I don't know if you can see it, but it's under there, and it is right next to that straight up and down pin, trying to keep it as still as possible. Last one, into the seam and into the other seam. Line those up and put my pin in. Now I can take this out. Now I also want to point out that the beginning and the end of the strip, this little segment here, where there's this little piece of a yellow and then the green, that little valley should also be the scant 1/4 inch, and over onto this end, that should be a scant 1/4 inch. I don't normally pin that because if it's off one way or the other, I'll end up doing a little bit of trimming for it anyhow, so it'll be all right, but just kind of keep that in mind. Now I'm going to go to the sewing machine, and when I get to the sewing machine, I'm going to start sewing in the valley, and I am going to be so precise to try to make my stitches go right over those marks that I made. If I'm not sewing right on those marks, that means I either did not mark it right or my seam allowance is not correct on my machine. So coming over here, I've already got my leader in. I've got my seam guide here, so I've got my scant 1/4 inch and my needle is moved over, and I'm ready to start. As I'm sewing over the seam guide, my pin is going to glide over it, and as I'm coming to this intersection, I want to sew right on top of that marked line. Made it over safely, come to my next one, feeling that my seams underneath are not flipping up on the bottom edge. Over that last one, gotta line this up. And sew all the way off. When I open this up and I look at these seams, my goal is to have those seams butt right together. So let's go to some pressing now. Oops, let's cut the leader off. I'm always first going to press the seam flat first, kind of setting the seam is what we call it. And I like to get it nice and hot, and then with my fingers open it up. And because it's still hot from the steam, it'll kind of hold in place with my fingers. Oh, I'm hoping I've got some good ones. I'm going to press this open. Now we flip it up and see if our intersections are good. This intersection, I don't know if you can tell, is off maybe by 3 threads. This one's off by 2, and this one is pretty much spot on. So I'm going to take the time and mark and pin and sew my second segment, then we'll come back and we'll put these together. Now I have these 2 segments sewn and pressed, and now it's just the idea of putting these 2 together. So I'm going to flip this one up, and I'm going to use my ruler, mark my scant 1/4 inch, do the precise pinning, and sew that seam. And when we come back, I'll let you see how it turned out. So I have both segments sewed together into my complete diamond. After I get it set like this, the next thing I do is I spray size it. I use some of my Mary Ellen spray sizing, and I'm always cautious to get sizing into these corners, but I also want to be sure that the sizing helps hold my seams nice and flat. So this is what the back of it looks like. This is what the front of it looks like. Next, we're going to trim these down to size.